So Safuwan, another week
Yeah.
in the A-League and another experience in Australia. How have you enjoyed your spell so far?
It's been good here. I've moved from Preston to Docklands, but now it's time where adapting time is over because I've been here almost 4 weeks. So I'm just hoping to get more playing times. I've got a good spell in Victory. I played 60 minutes, and the following week I played against Wellington, the whole of 90 minutes. So today, it was good being on the bench. Having to have another action. Having to get the look of what Perth Glory is. Hoping to get another debut coming up soon.
And Q Yalian's played in the right back position. What's it like having another World Cup player playing alongside you at Melbourne City?
Yes, he was, another good player that signed for Melbourne City. Having to have him in the team is another big bonus because we have, lots of star players in the team. From that, we can only improve by learning, another new chapter from these players.
And speaking of learning from experienced players as well, you've played alongside Premier League players now, Damien Duff and Robert Corrin. What have you learned from them as well?
They are the ones that get the team going. Robbie Collin played in England. Even Damien Duff played in England. It was a dream came true for me having to play alongside Damien Duff for the past Victory games and also Wellington game. Unfortunately he's out due to injury. But these are the players that they are committed. Even the age that they are coming in now, it's hard for them, but they're still giving their 100% for the love of the football.
And speaking of dreams coming true, just give us a little bit of a recap on your first match and the Victory game and coming into such an important game for the club. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, it was a blessing in disguise because I have yet to play when I first came here. Right after Eric had an injury, soon after I knew that I was going to play against Victory. So the only time I knew about Victory is that they are the derby side of Melbourne. It was intense. Everything was heating up in the changing room. Players were hyped up to get going. But it was different when I was back in Singapore playing for the Malaysia League. We do have derby games, but it's not as hectic as Melbourne against Victory against City.
And a very much different game that when you went to Wellington a few weeks later. Talk us through that experience. A bit more physical, a bit more of a foreign environment, cold, windy as well. Talk us through that.
Yes, when I was in Victory, it was not so called of a away game because we were in the same city. Then we had to travel to Wellington for 3 hours. Having to settle down in the cold weather, it was different from Melbourne. But I expected it was windy because we played in an environment where there's no buildings around it. It was like a coastal area, mountains were behind it. Full packed stadium, different game. More physical side of Wellington, different from the A-League sides. It was challenging because I have to deal with the wind, you have to deal with the pitch, you have to deal with the environment. Overall, it was fantastic. I couldn't ask for more, having to play my first 90 minutes for the club.
And you've had a few tastes of match experience, I suppose. You've kind of seen what there is to achieve. What are your goals for the rest of the time here at Melbourne City?
I'm not too sure what's the future at stake. I'm just taking one day at a time. I'm hoping to, play more times here in Melbourne because I'm not used to sitting on the bench because I was playing almost every single game in Malaysia League. So, but coming to a new environment, I couldn't ask for more but to just be patient. Hopefully things will come in a way. But I've been working really hard in Melbourne. I've got back from training straight to the gym, pool, recovery. I've been doing whatever it takes to just be on the pitch.
And you've said you moved from Preston to Docklands. I'm sure you've spent more time exploring the city as well. Has there been anywhere that's caught your eye, or been an eatery that's possibly kind of been your favourite while you've been here in Melbourne?
Yeah, I was living in Preston for a week, then I moved to Docklands. But Preston, you wouldn't have any things to do because it was like a laid-back place. It was off way from city, but it was closer to Bundura, Latrobe University. That was the only good things the only bonus that you could get staying in Preston. But when I moved to Docklands, I was every day out in the city because I've been with my wife here. She came when I was here, so the only thing that can keep us going is to go around the city. But I've been to Lygon Street, I've been to King Street, Queen Street. I've been exploring Melbourne from day one. We've got Asian dishes here, restaurants, Thai restaurants, Indonesians, Malaysians. So I don't feel left out when I was in Melbourne, or I'm in Melbourne now. So I'm still trying to get a good spot in Melbourne to see where I could go in the late night, or just get a coffee and go home.
No Singapore chili crab yet?
No, but I spoke to one of the players, Chapman. He told me that he could get one of the black pepper crab here in Melbourne. That is similar to Singapore, but he's yet to let me know the details.
Still not the same.
Still not the same.
Trust me. So, what have you missed most about Singapore? Is there anything in particular that kind of makes you think of home a bit more?
I've not gotten the homesick fever yet because most of the time I've been traveling away from home. But it was different now because I'm away for a really long time. I miss every single one. At times when you go to bed, you think that you get your parents here, or your siblings, or your in-laws here. But it take a while to get the thing going. I've really missed Singapore. I really miss my old mates. But then again, it's for the better future. I have to step out of my comfort zone. It's not going to be easy, but I've always been taking things day by day, hoping for the best in Melbourne City.
And finally, the reaction of people back home. I know it's been a surprise for us here at Melbourne City that there's so much interest over from Singapore now. But have you been surprised with the reaction back home with your signing here?
Yes, I've got texts from unknown people in Singapore, having to have reporters calling me from my Singapore line. Will I have to change my Aussie number?
Oh God.
So I've been getting requests every single day from not only from Singapore, even we have Singaporeans community club in Melbourne. They've yet to spoke to me, but I've heard that they have something in store for me to mingle with the Singaporeans here, not to be left out from being away from home. But then again, it was a surprise for me because when I was back in Singapore, there was a daily coverage about me, but not as intense as this. I've got too many requests coming in from everywhere. Not only from Singapore, Malaysia are writing about it, Thailand writing about it. But then again, it's good for Melbourne City, Singapore football. We need coverage like this to get our players going. Not only for myself, I can be the first one, but I'm always hoping for soon players from Singapore to come here. Hoping that Singapore football can go to another level.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, mate.